Hey guys, welcome back to another YouTube video. Now, in today's video, guys, I am finally going to be delivering the traps-related video for these Saw rankings that I have promised for a while now. I know that there's been a big delay between these different Saw-related videos. I've kind of been busy with other stuff, not really too focused on YouTube. Don't worry, though, still enjoying some Halloween stuff, obviously putting up decorations. And I'm trying to see some horror movies right now that are coming out in theaters as well. I do want to see The Exorcist, despite some of the doubts that I have for it, especially with people's reviews and stuff like that. I think I had a little bit too high of expectations for that movie. Also, of course, the new FNAF movie that's going to be coming out at the end of the month. So stay tuned. And just be patient, kind of busy with other stuff, but, as always, if you guys have any suggestions, I would love to take them. I've seen a few suggestions for more Saw ranking videos, so there could be more in the future. Right now, it's kind of on hold. I don't have any other ones planned, so just make sure you stay tuned for future content, and, that's pretty much it. Let's get on to the video. I kind of cheated on this quite a bit, because I put out a poll asking you guys what format you guys would like this particular video to be in, because I was struggling to figure out what format I wanted to do. Originally, I was going to do a top 10, but I've never been that type of YouTuber, so I kind of went with what you guys chose, which was best from each movie, and I think that was honestly not a bad choice by you guys, so good job. Thank you for making me make up my mind. And I could have done a tier list, which would be super fun, but also super long with how many traps there are in the franchise. But the reason why I said I kind of cheated is because there are a lot more good traps than I thought in some of the individual movies, and a lot of them I just had to go with two, like in a lot of these different Saw movies. So I kind of cheated there in a way, a little bit, but I just couldn't go without talking about some of these traps in these movies, so that's why I did that. And I'm also going to be throwing in the worst trap in each movie. What is, in my opinion, the worst trap from each movie. So if I don't mention one of your favorite traps or something like that, please let me know in the comment section down below. There are obviously a crap ton of traps to talk about. I'm probably not going to cover all of your favorites, so make sure you let me know in the comment section down below. And that's pretty much it. These are just my personal favorite traps, so don't take any offense to these. We got the first Saw movie, and this was one where I had to go with two for my favorite traps. First, let's address the elephant in the room, obviously, is going to be the reverse bear trap. I think a lot of people saw that I was going to be putting this up here. It's not personally my number one, but I couldn't go without mentioning it because I knew you guys would bug me for it. But obviously, the first reverse bear trap is iconic for so many different reasons. Obviously, being a very, very good advertisement for the trailer. Before even watching this franchise and not knowing what this franchise was about, seeing Amanda in that reverse bear trap and hearing the voice of John Kramer, and me thinking as a kid, being stupid, that it's Billy the Puppet running all this. So I'm thinking, what would you do if a inanimate puppet with makeup on it, puts you in this trap and is telling you all these things? I would be terrified. So the reverse bear trap just gives me back a lot of memories before watching this franchise and not knowing what it was about. Just absolutely scared the crap out of me. But also, it was very pivotal in Amanda's character and her becoming one of Jigsaw's apprentices, so that was another big thing about this trap. Additionally, we finally get to see it activated in Saw 3D, and it was amazing. One of the goriest and very gruesome traps in the franchise, and so it's a very simple but effective trap that has just become a staple icon for the franchise at this point, honestly. But my personal favorite trap from this movie is going to be the bathroom trap. I know some people have some issues with this trap, but I just like the dynamics of this trap because I think that it just every time I come back to the first Saw movie and I just see how simple things used to be, the bathroom trap is definitely what I think of, because it's just these two guys put into a room, have no idea why they're here. Their ankles are, chained to this pole, and they're trying to find all these different ways to make it out without doing what is right in front of them. They have this option presented in front of them this entire time where they can just choose to saw off their foot at any time and get out of there. But they choose to negotiate, have conversations, try to figure out why they're here, try to figure out some other way to get out, a loophole, something. And eventually, at the ending of the movie, Dr. Gordon finally decides, you know what, there's no other way out of this. I just have to do it. He picks up the saw, cuts off his foot. And I just think that the dynamics of this trap are the reason why I really, really like it. Because in a lot of the future movies, I don't think a lot of people really notice this, is that most of the traps had time limits on this one, on their traps, but the bathroom trap plays out throughout the entire movie. There's no real time limit to it necessarily. They have a lot of time to think of different ways that they can make it out of this trap before coming to realize that the only way that they're going to be able to make it out is by literally cutting through bone and flesh. And so I just really like the dynamics of this trap for that reason, and not having a strict, 60-second time limit or something like that. That would make this trap a lot more boring. But the fact that there's not really a time limit and that they try to figure out other ways is what makes this trap really, really interesting to me, and is just reminds me of how simple the Saw franchise used to be back at its core roots. But unfortunately, my least favorite trap from the first Saw movie is going to be the shotgun hallway. It's just a very, very, I shouldn't even say unfortunately, it's just a very, very dumb trap in general, where you're killing a completely innocent, I know that there have been a lot of scummy officers and detectives in the Saw franchise, but you're killing a completely innocent detective who's just simply doing his job for the sake of killing him, and it's one of the reasons why I think a lot of people do not believe in John Kramer's moral code, despite their efforts to kind of try to put you on his side and have you in his shoes, which I think Saw X does a lot better job at. But the first Saw movie, not so much, especially with the shotgun hallway trap. Again, not really fair to call it a trap, just an unfair kind of Home Alone style trap, really, and it's just completely unfair, and just a really frustrating way to take out Detective Tapp, and I believe, I forgot what his name was, but his one of the other detectives that works alongside him as well, I believe, died in this hallway trap as well. But yeah, my least favorite one from the first Saw movie. Moving on to Saw 2, and Saw 2 kind of has a is kind of interesting because, kind of like with the first Saw movie with my placements, I have an individual trap that I really, really like, and also a more bigger scale trap that kind of plays throughout the movie. So for my individual trap, which I would say is my personal favorite trap from the entire movie, I do think that this is better than the other one that I'm going to mention here, is going to be the death mask, or as a lot more people call it, the Venus fly trap. It's just a really, really cool trap in general. A nice variation, because it's very similar to the reverse bear trap, where you have the eye, or not the eye, why did I say the eye? The key underneath his eye socket, and he has to cut it out with the scalpel so that he can unlock this mask and take it off. He ends up failing, and the mask closes in on itself like a Venus flytrap, and it has like spikes in the mask, so the spikes go into his head and impale him. Just a very, very very cool designed trap. And probably even more cleverly designed than the reverse bear trap. You kind of saw the loopholes that the reverse bear trap has when, what's his name, Hoffman managed to escape it in Saw 6. Whereas with this trap, it looks like there's no way that you're going to be getting past the brute force of this trap just closing in on itself. So a very interesting trap, or a very, very innovative trap, very, very cool design. And then for my kind of more bigger scale trap, similar to the bathroom trap in the first Saw movie, is going to be the house trap. Again, I just like this trap for the dynamics. I don't think that is as good as the Venus flytrap. I really, really do like that trap, and I don't think it is as good as the bathroom trap, obviously. But I really like the dynamics of it, again. Like, it's kind of more plays out like an escape room, which is different for the Saw franchise, and we don't really see a whole lot more of this in the future Saw movies. And just people, for the first time, trying to work together, trying to, put a bunch of pieces to the puzzle together, and all these different little individual traps that they have to do to acquire those those puzzle pieces. I don't know. I just really like the dynamics of it. Some of the people that go insane or throw other people in there, even though it's supposed to be their test, like where you have the one guy, forgot what his name was. I think it was like Victor or something like that, but he's the bigger guy. You know who I'm talking about, who throws Amanda into the needle pit, even though he was supposed to go in there and find the antidote or whatever, like that kind of stuff. I just really like those types of dynamics in this trap. Just really, really cool. My least favorite trap from Saw 2 is probably going to be the electric staircase. Another one where it's like, is it even really fair to call it a trap? It's just like, I think it's where they're going into the Gideon meat plant, however you pronounce it, and like the SWAT team's going in there, and there's, again, it's like with the shotgun hallway, it's just kind of like more of a booby trap. It isn't really a Saw trap. I'm not frustrated at this trap like I was with the shotgun hallway, but it's just kind of there. And there's no real bad traps in Saw 2 that I can think of, so I just put it as my least favorite trap for Saw 2. Moving on to Saw 3, and this was not even close for the best and the worst trap on here. I only had one best trap for Saw 3, and my personal favorite trap, which I'm sure a lot more people can agree with, is the rack, where you essentially have Jeff, who has been tested throughout this entire movie for people who were responsible for this drunk driving incident that caused the death of his son, and you have the main culprit of this incident who is put onto this board where all of his limbs are attached, and I believe there's like a certain time limit to it. I can't remember what it was, but basically every so often, one of his limbs will continue to turn and turn and turn and turn and crank until they can't anymore, basically. And so you have his arms attached to this board, you have his legs attached to it, where it's more so his foot, not really his entire leg, and his head attached to it. And I'll tell you, anybody who's watched the Saw franchise knows that you kind of get a little desensitized to the traps of this franchise with just how brutal and gruesome they are. But of the very few times that I've seen Saw 3, this trap still to this day makes my stomach absolutely turn. Just watching his limbs slowly crank and crank and crank, and just hearing the noise and seeing it visually is one of the worst images engraved in my head. It is a very hard trap to watch, and it's not just the fact that it's like really gruesome and, you know, just brutal and stomach churning, but also this trap does play a significant role in Saw 3 as well as future Saw movies. We get to see some of the apprentices helping put together this trap, and some of the way that it affected other, certain things in future movies. And also, it's just probably one of the most intricately, or not necessarily intricately, but well-constructed traps in the Saw franchise, where it looks like it just amazingly engineered to where, like, it's not going to break easily or anything like that. It looks like you're putting in this trap and there's no way of getting out. It looks like you're in there, you're locked in there pretty freaking good. So yeah, the rack, a very, very stomach-churning trap, and I'm sure a lot of other people can agree with this being their favorite for Saw 3. But my least favorite, at the opposite end, which, again, not even close, it was very easy to decide this, was the classroom trap, the opening trap of Saw 3. It's unfortunate because I think had this trap not been rigged, and designed in a certain way to where, like, you couldn't beat it, I think it would be an interesting trap, because the design sounds like a cool idea, where this guy has all these chains attached to him, and he has to, unattach all of them to escape. But we find out later that it was rigged to where there was no way that he was going to escape, and he only has 1 minute to finish the trap, I believe, and he's somehow supposed to take out a chain that goes through his jaw. Like, if you've ever seen those chin piercings or those, like, lip piercings where you got, like, the loop, like this on your, I don't know where they put it. I think it's usually the lip. Basically, think of that, but going through your jaw. Like, how are you supposed to get that out of there I have no idea, but this is just a very poorly designed trap. It's obviously rigged. It's one of Amanda's traps, so it looks very, very crappy, and is basically the exact opposite to the rack, where it's just poorly designed, rigged, unfair, just not good. On to Saw 4. Again, I have two different traps for this movie. I think on the gore slash like gruesome side, I chose the ice block trap because we didn't see this trap coming. We thought what was going to happen with Detective Matthews at the ending of this movie is that once the ice block melted, he was just going to be suspended in the air and, just basically be hanged to death. But what actually happens is when Rigg finishes his test and he comes into the room, these two ice blocks from the ceiling come smashing down and just crush his head. And it's really awesome to see it play out. And it's also very surprising. I did not see Matthews getting taken out like this at all. So it's a very, very surprising one. And then my second choice was the bedroom trap, which I think is really just because it's pretty satisfying. I also got to see some of the behind the scenes of this trap and seeing how it was put together. It's a very, very cool trap, and it's also very satisfying because of the reasons why this guy was put into this trap. I think out of all the reasons in the entire Saw franchise why somebody should be put into a trap, this guy probably has the most obvious and blunt reasons. Obviously not going to mention him on the channel, but yeah. And he basically has to poke two of his eye. I think he has to basically make himself go blind. He has to poke two of his eyes out. Otherwise, all of his limbs will be just completely ripped off. And he manages to get one eye out, but he can't manage to go fully blind. So he fails his test, and all of his limbs just get ripped out in one blow, and it's freaking brutal. So yeah, bedroom trap is my second choice. For my least favorite trap of the movie, there honestly could be a lot here, but I ultimately, with the knife chair, it was, I believe, Kramer's first trap, and so it was kind of a learning experience for him, but it's obviously a very poorly designed trap, where you have this dude, I can't remember who he was, he was the guy who caused the miscarriage in Jill, his wife, and so you'd think he'd come up with a much more brutal trap to use. But this one was just very poorly designed. He was supposed to push his face through this fence of knives, this kind of these knives that are interlocked like this, and he's supposed to push his face through it, but it ends up just collapsing on itself, and then eventually the guy starts attacking Kramer because it breaks, and then Kramer just sidesteps, jukes him, and then he falls into this razor wire, and that's how he goes. It's just very, very weird. The trap doesn't even end up working the way it's supposed to. It's really stupid. Just a poorly designed trap, but obviously it's one of Kramer's first traps, so it's easy to see why it broke very easily. On to Saw 5, and this one honestly probably has some of just doesn't have a whole lot of good traps to choose from, honestly. But my favorite trap was the opening trap, the pendulum trap. I think this is a pretty cool trap, but again, not really up there too far. Saw 5 doesn't really have a whole lot to choose from in my opinion. But I ended up going with the pendulum trap, even though I'm pretty sure this was actually rigged. It was designed by Hoffman, and yeah, I believe that it's later discovered that this trap was rigged and there was no way that he was going to survive it. But basically, you have this swinging battle axe that's coming down on this dude, and he has to smash his fingers in enough time to escape this trap. And if he doesn't, eventually the battle axe will come down and literally chop him in half. And so it's a pretty brutal trap when he does fail it. Pretty cool, but unfortunately Saw 5 doesn't really have a whole lot to choose from, so I was expecting something a little bit more interesting. Then my least favorite trap is going to be the glass coffin, which again, isn't even really fair to call this a trap because it's really more of just a plot device to get Detective Hoffman to move on to the next movie. You see it appear in Saw 4 thinking, oh, this might be a cool trap. You got these shards in this glass coffin. Looks kind of interesting. Then it turns out that it's just for Detective Hoffman to use to escape Schramm and seal Schramm's fate, literally. And so it's a convenient plot device is really all it is, and so that's why it's my least favorite from Saw 5. Saw 6, another one where I had two choices, where One I'm not really too proud of, to be honest. It is the acid room trap. I know that there are some people who have problems with this ending. I find it pretty satisfying, and so that's why I put it here, because initially you think that this trap's going to play out a lot differently than it ends up doing, where it's really a choose their fate kind of trap. And so I think that's really interesting, and that's why I put it here. It's very satisfying. I know some people didn't really like that Saw 6 twist at the end, but I am a personal favorite of it. But a less controversial choice would probably be the pound of flesh trap from this movie, which is just like very straightforward. Whoever can, throw on the most flesh onto the scale, in 60 seconds survives. And so you got them like trying to like cut off like pieces of their skin and like fat and stuff like that. You got like this fat guy who's here, so it seems like it's going to be an easy win for him because he does have a lot of fat. But the one girl's just like, screw it, I'm not going to play, wimp with this trap. I'm just going to straight up chop off my arm. So she chops off her arm, throws it on the scale. It's freaking brutal. So yeah, that's why I put it here. And then my least favorite trap from Saw 6, I might be forgetting some worse traps, but for me, it's going to be the oxygen crusher trap, because while the trap itself is not bad, I think it is a really, really cool idea and design. The reason why they throw in the person into the trap for being a smoker, literally just being smoking, is why they're put into this trap. Is the reason why I put it here. It's just it just gives an unfair advantage to the person who's not smoking. And he's obviously going to lose this, hold your breath contest. And so that's why I put it here. Moving on to Saw 3D. This one, I had one favorite one, but I actually had multiple, that being two, of my least favorite ones. So, my favorite trap from Saw 3D is going to be the silent circle. I like to call it like the fish hook trap, whatever you want to call it, where basically you have this girl who has this fishing wire down her throat with this key attached to it, and he has to pull out the key to unlock the trap to get her to escape. The catch is, though, if she screams, these poles that are closing in on her neck will come closer and closer and closer, and so if she screams too much, she'll die before the time runs out. And so he has to try to pull this out as quick as he can, but also as quiet as he can. And she ends up dying, and it's really here, not because it's like brutal, not because it's like really gory or whatever, but it's just really, really hard to watch. Like with the rack, very stomach churning watching it go down, and so that's why it is my favorite trap from the movie. For my least favorite traps of Saw 3, and these ones are really competing for my least favorite of the entire franchise, especially the second one. But for my first one is going to be the suspended cage, where you have the guy played by Sean Patrick Flanery, finally wakes up, and John Kramer basically explains to him why he's here. He's in this cage that's suspended in the air, and John Kramer plays the tape, explains to him why he's here, and after that, the cage just opens up, and he could have just died right then and there had he not been paying enough attention. He could have just fell into the spikes and died, and then what happens? What's supposed to happen after that? So it's really, really stupid how this trap is put together, and the fact that, like, I feel like most people wouldn't be paying attention enough and they would have just fell and died, and then what's the whole point of setting all this up? So that goes here because it's super stupid. And then you got this one, which is, man, it's competing for like the worst, I'm telling you, competing for probably the worst trap in the entire franchise, which is the brazen pole, where you have this girl who's the wife of the guy played by Sean Patrick Flanery in this movie, who's put in here for no other reason other than the dynamics of having an innocent person that having their life on the line, and if you fail this test, that their life is in danger. But it's like, the final trap is basically where he does the trap that he claimed that he survived, when having this interview on this Saturday Night Live type of channel or whatever. And so he has to attach these meat hooks to his pecs, pull himself up, grab this like key or whatever to free his wife. And we all know that by physics, his pectoral muscles are not going to be enough to hold the meat hooks in. And so that this trap is essentially rigged. I mean, it's kind of his fault for coming up with an idea that obviously just doesn't make sense and is not going to work in real life. But at the same time, it's like, you knew that this trap wasn't going to work, so why did you decide to put him through it, other than he claimed that he went through it? And so his wife ends up dying for really no reason whatsoever, completely innocent, getting burned to death, one of the worst ways to die, in a brazen bowl. It's just like, oh man, this is a frustrating trap. Probably my least favorite from the entire franchise. Moving on to Jigsaw, another one where there's really not a lot to pick from here, but my favorite is going to probably be the laser collar. I feel like this is probably a lot of people's. It's an interesting idea, definitely innovative, doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, not really. I do like the confession part of it, and how really the entire Jigsaw movie, like, something that I can say good about it, is that I like that the traps are, centered around people confessing their mistakes and some of the horrible things that they have done, and this trap really, really does play around that, where you have this collar with lasers sticking up, that will close down if he fails his test, his confession test, and that ends up happening. You think that Logan's also in this laser collar, but his is actually a fake one, and so you think that he ends up dying because the lasers go into his neck, and there's just kind of like a bunch of blood that spews out, but it turns out that that was actually just fake blood. And what really happens with the detective, who's also in the laser collar, is that when the lasers come down, his entire head gets, like, split into this, like, Demogorgon flower-looking shape. It's very, very gruesome. It's CGI heavy. Doesn't really make sense, like, where the hell is the skull at? But it is very, very cool to see nonetheless, so that's why I put it here. My least favorite trap is going to be the chain hangers. I've heard a lot of people kind of point out some of the obvious loopholes to this trap and obvious ways to get, like, to beat this trap. And so that's why it's here. I don't really think I need to explain this one a whole lot. I really can't remember a whole lot about this trap, but I just know that there were, like, a lot of loopholes to it, and it was, like, easily beatable, but the people were stupid, and ended up, one of the people ended up failing this trap, so that's why it goes here. On to Spiral, and honestly, this was very, very hard to choose. I think Spiral, while not having the best trap out of the franchise, has some of the best traps of the franchise. I don't think there's a single bad trap in this movie, honestly. I think all of them are well put together, and so if I had to choose, and like I said, I'm giving credit to all these traps in this movie because I think really all of them are really great. If I had to choose, though, I'd probably go with the glass grinder. I think it's a unique trap in the franchise where you have, like, all these bottles being put into this grinder and throwing flying glass and shards into this guy's back. It sounds really brutal. It looks very brutal. It's very hard to watch. Yeah, that's probably my favorite one. It's very unique. And for my least favorite one, which, again, I don't even think is really a bad trap, but some people have pointed out, like, easy ways that you could potentially beat this trap, is going to be the finger trap, where you have this guy who's put into this, like, electric bathtub, and his fingers are, like, attached to these, like, it's like, if you've ever seen those Chinese finger trap, it's kind of like that thing. His fingers are in, like, these Chinese finger trap looking chain things. And basically, he has to try to make it out. I can't remember how, but if he doesn't, his fingers will literally be, like, slowly pulled out. It's very, very hard to watch. This is my least favorite one, but I'm just telling you all the great things about this trap. It's just, I've heard that this trap could be beatable because they never said that they never really showed if his legs were, like, strapped down or anything like that, so he could have just stepped out of the electric bathtub and went from there. But otherwise, it's a very, very brutal trap, very, very hard to watch, and so really all the traps in Spiral are really, really great, so I'm not knocking on any of them, honestly. Then, finally, Saw X, my favorite trap from this movie, without a doubt. I mean, not really without a doubt. There, again, like with Spiral, a lot of really, really great traps in this movie, but my personal favorite is going to be the bloodboarding trap for a couple of reasons. Now, while I could choose some of the other traps that were very, very, like, brutal, gory, especially the one where the girl cuts off her leg and has to suck out bone marrow, like, that one, I don't even like saying that. It just sounds really brutal. Then you had, like, the brain surgery one. The radiation therapy one was okay. Kind of cool, but not the best. But the blood porting trap is my personal favorite because it's not necessarily brutal or gory, but extremely emotional and did not play out the way we were expecting it. I believe it was supposed to be made for Cecilia and Parker, but obviously they gained an upper hand at one point and forced John Kramer and this innocent boy in this trap. And for the first time in the franchise, you see John Kramer feel very, very hopeless. Like this was not supposed to happen. I now have an innocent child's life in danger. I have to save him. And so you see both of them trying to sacrifice each other and pull the lever and have all this blood spill onto them and basically drown them to death in blood. And none of them wanting each other to die, both trying to sacrifice each other. Extremely, extremely emotional scene, and so that's why it's my favorite. It's definitely a contender for one of my favorite traps in the entire franchise. So, yeah, that is definitely my favorite from Saw X. My least favorite from Saw X, which this is another one where I don't think it's bad, but I just hate the way that it plays out, and it kind of makes for a little bit of an anticlimactic ending, where you think that Cecilia and Parker have the upper hand for a while, but it turns out John Kramer, he's always one step ahead. So once they think they're going to get away scot-free, John Kramer has one last twist, or one last trick up his sleeve, and basically they go back to the control room that Amanda and Kramer were watching all these traps play out at, and it turns out that that room itself was a trap for them in the case that they went rogue and turned on them. And so it basically is a gas chamber. The doors close in on itself, the windows close in on itself, and there's only one air hole that somebody can stick their head through. So they basically have to duke it out against each other to solidify their safety. Cecilia ends up manhandling Parker, killing him, and surviving. And so while I give her the respect for being able to take it on her own and survive, it is kind of anticlimactic that she kind of got away without really having to do much. No real self-infliction. She obviously had no guilt in killing Parker because she didn't give a crap about him or any of her other apprentices. And so it's a little anticlimactic that she just got away scot-free like that and not really going through much pain or suffering, really. So that's why it's my least favorite trap. And that's going to sum up this video. Finally got it out of the way. I know it was quite the delay. Let me know, like I said, in the comment section, any of your favorite traps. I know that there's a lot on here that I did not mention. And so let me know of any traps that you really, really liked in the comment section down below. And I think that's pretty much all I have for you guys. Let me know of any suggestions for videos in the comments as well. And I'm going to be trying to get back to movie reviews here pretty soon. Obviously, with the Taylor Swift movie coming out, work was obviously very busy. And also, there's not really a whole lot of movies coming out around that movie because it was a very, very big hit. So that is it for the video. Stay tuned. That's all I got for you guys. Like and subscribe. And I will see you next time.